Today's story that I want to share with you comes from this book entitled The Barefoot Book of Jewish Tales. It's written by Shoshana Boyd Gelfond and illustrated by Amanda Hall. And the story we're going to read is entitled Clever Rachel. Every child is special. Some children are beautiful, some are talented, some are strong, and some are kind. Usually it takes a while to discover what gift God has given a child. But this story is about a girl whose special gift was clear to everyone from the day that she was born. This girl was called Rachel. Even when she was a baby, her mother noticed how clever Rachel was. One morning, she came to take the baby out of her crib, and she saw that Rachel had lined up her alphabet blocks to make the word cat and dog, box and bin, all standing at the end of her crib. "What a clever little girl you are," her mother exclaimed. She went downstairs to tell her husband, who owned the inn in their small town. "Nonsense," Rachel's father replied. "It's just a coincidence. The blocks must have landed just that way by chance." He could scarcely believe they had given birth to such a bright child. When Rachel started school, her teacher saw straight away that this little girl was extraordinarily clever. She wrote in Rachel's first report card, "Rachel is by far the most intelligent child I have ever taught. I have no doubt that she will do great things in the years to come." Rachel's father read the report and turned to his wife. "I know that God has given our daughter the gift of a very fine mind," he said. "But what really matters in life is not how clever you are, but how kind. We must make sure that she grows up to be kind and thoughtful, too. She must always remember to help people who are in need." Rachel's mother nodded in agreement. She and her husband were both good people, and their inn was a place of warmth and hospitality to everyone who visited it. So it was not difficult for them to show their daughter how to be kind. As Rachel grew up, she learned to look after the strangers who stopped in the inn for the night. She learned to notice when visitors were sick and when elderly travelers were tired and needed some special care. She always made sure that children felt safe and had everything they wanted. Everyone who visited the inn appreciated Rachel's special gifts, and everyone who lived in the town knew they were lucky to have someone so kind and so clever living among them. One day, a message from the king came to the small town, the hooves of his horse clattering over the cobbles as he passed through. Drawing to a halt, the messenger jumped up from his horse and read from the king's decree. "His Royal Highness, the king, has decided to marry the cleverest woman in the land. Any unmarried young woman who is especially clever should make herself known to me at once," he announced. Immediately, Rachel's parents understood why God had given Rachel such special gifts. She was to become a queen. They told the messenger that their daughter was exceptionally clever, and then brought her before him. "By order of the king, I have 3 questions to test how clever you are," the messenger said. "What is the fastest thing? What is the richest thing? And what is the dearest thing?" Rachel answered in a flash. "The fastest thing is thought, the richest thing is earth, and the dearest thing is love." The messenger knew at once he had found the right woman. He galloped straight back to the palace and cried out to the king, "I have found her! I have found her! I have found you the cleverest woman in the land." But the king was not so sure, even when he had heard Rachel's answers to his 3 questions. "I'd like to see this woman for myself," he said, "and I will give her a more difficult task so that you can find out if she really is as clever as she seems. And if she is, then I will marry her without delay." The messenger rode back to the town where Rachel lived and delivered the king's command. His Royal Highness orders you to appear at the palace in a week's time, neither walking nor riding, neither dressed nor undressed, and bringing a gift that is not a gift. When Rachel's parents heard the strange request, they begged her not to go. "Darling, how will you be able to answer this peculiar command?" said her mother. "And who knows what the king will do if you can't?" muttered her father. But Rachel just smiled and told them not to worry. She collected the few things that she needed and set out for the palace. The king was waiting. He saw Rachel in the distance and walked out to meet her. As she drew closer, he smiled. So far, so good. She was riding on a goat, with one foot dragging on the ground. Very clever, he thought. Neither riding nor walking. Then he looked to see how she was dressed and saw that she was wearing no clothes but had wrapped herself in a fishnet. "I like this woman," he said to himself. "Who else could have managed to arrive both dressed and not dressed? Now let us see if she has a gift for me which is not a gift." When Rachel arrived before the king, she looked into his eyes and saw that he was a kind man. She understood that his strange requests were because he was looking for a partner who was clever as he was, and that he was tired of being lonely. Deciding that she wanted to marry him, she held out her gift to him, hidden inside her cupped hands. "Your Highness," she murmured, "a gift for you." But as the king reached out to take the gift from Rachel, she opened her hands and a dove slipped out from between them and flew into the branches of a nearby tree. The king saw that Rachel had brought him a gift, but it was one that he could not keep. As he watched the dove fly away, he smiled and held out his hand to Rachel. "Will you marry me and be my queen?" he asked. "Yes, Your Highness, I will," replied Rachel. The king held Rachel's hands and looked into her eyes. "There is one condition," he went on. "I know not how clever you really are. I know now how clever you really are, but despite that, you must never question any of my judgments." This seemed like a strange condition for marriage, but Rachel agreed, and the wedding took place soon after. Rachel and the king lived happily for quite some time. One day, however, she was out walking in the woods when she saw a poor man sitting beside the forest track weeping. "What is the matter?" she asked. The man knew this was the queen and grew afraid, but Rachel's kind eyes and gentle voice encouraged him to answer. "My family has very little money," he began, "but we do have a horse, a mare. When she became pregnant, we were overjoyed. Now we might have a second horse that we could sell to buy food, but when the mare finally gave birth, she was lying underneath my neighbor's wagon. And so now the foal belongs to my neighbor. It belongs to him because it came from his wagon." Rachel was puzzled. She frowned. "What utter nonsense!" she exclaimed. "Who gave such a ridiculous ruling?" The man lowered his eyes. "It is the king's ruling, my lady," he said. "No one can challenge it." Rachel thought quietly for a moment. "You are correct that no one can challenge the king's laws, but that doesn't mean the king can't change his own mind. Meet me here tomorrow. Listen carefully to what I tell you and do everything I say." The next day, Rachel returned to the wood with a fishing rod. The poor man was waiting for her. She gave him the rod and told him to go and stand by the palace and cast the line through an open window, so that the hook and line went through the window into the room beyond. "He must stand there," she said, "and pretend to be fishing." The poor man couldn't understand how this would change anything, but he did as Rachel instructed. He stood outside the palace with his fishing rod all morning until the king looked out and saw him. It was a ridiculous sight. A man fishing with his line hanging over the windowsill and trailing across the marble floor of the palace. "What on earth is this?" the king demanded. "I have never seen anything so silly in all my life." The poor man shook in his boots at the king's anger, but he answered his question. "I'm waiting for fish to come from your floor," he replied. "After all, a horse was born from my neighbor's wagon, making it his, not mine. If that is the case, then any fish that jump from your floor onto my rod must be mine." The king knew at once what was going on and whose idea this must be. "Rachel?" he yelled. Only his wife could have dreamt up something like this and taught the poor man what to say. When the queen appeared, the king took her in his arms. "You agreed when we married that you would never question my rulings," he said sadly. "Now you have broken your promise, which was the condition of our marriage. You must leave the palace forever because I love you so much. I will let you take one thing with you. Choose whatever is dearest to you and go." Then the king turned his back on Rachel so that she would not see his tears. He fled to his rooms and did not come down for the rest of the day, as he could not bear to see his beloved wife go. Rachel did not leave straight away, however. As usual, she was thinking. As night fell and the king slipped into a deep sleep, Rachel sneaked into his bedchamber and wrapped him in a blanket. 2 servants then carefully lifted their master from his bed and carried him from the room, gently setting him in the carriage next to the queen. When the queen awoke the next morning, he looked up and saw the trees of the forest above him and his wife sitting next to him. "Darling Rachel," he exclaimed, "I never thought I would see you again. But where are we, and what am I doing here? Have you disobeyed me yet again?" Rachel looked deep into his eyes. "I did not mean to disobey you the first time, and I most certainly have not done so again. You said I could take my dearest possession with me when I left the palace, and that is exactly what I have done. You, my darling, are the thing that is most dear to me. I can live without the palace, and I can live without being queen, but I cannot live without you. So you are what I have chosen to take with me." At this point, the king realized how foolish he had been. "Come home with me, my dear one," he said, "and we will live together in the palace forever." When they arrived back at the palace, the king issued 3 decrees. The first was that the poor man should have his foal back. The second was to insist that the queen could and should overrule his judgments if he was ever wrong. And the third was to appoint Rachel as a high judge and chancellor, because not only was she wise, but her kindness towards others and her understanding of the poor was the best in the land. What did you think of that story today? I hope you'll come and check it out soon and see other stories that are coming. We'll have 1 or 2 a week, and hope that you offer up some of your own as well. Be well, be smart, and care for one another. Bye.